Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here for the next chapter of Rebecca. I have been waiting for this moment all day. It's rainy outside. I just made a delicious cup of Cadbury hot chocolate, thanks to one of my members, Ange, who sent it to me from Australia with the best marshmallows I ever had in my life. And I am just like, I'm all cuddled up with my book. So you go get something warm and toasty, or maybe something cool and refreshing, and just do your diamond painting and listen. I'm just diamond painting another section of Quiet Snow. And I will tell you that section is done now. All the way done. We're into the next one. I'll give you a little peek. We left off with Mrs. Danvers taking the unnamed UN through Rebecca's room, and not just taking her through the room, pulling every one of Rebecca's articles out to have her look at it, feel it, touch it, how exquisite it was. It was just so creepy. A lot of you messaged me, WTF, what was that about? It was so creepy. I love how involved you guys are in this book, and I really think it's because there's really just not a lot of good reads out there. I was talking to a friend. She's like, I do the book talk and the book tube. I'm like, what's that? And she's like, well, it's where you can go and find like a really good book. And she's like, they always disappoint. And she buys books. She'll buy like 5 or 6. And she's like, it's just so lame. And I'm like, you got to go back to the classics. Go to the classic. This is a classic. Okay, I'm done with my little spiel. Chapter 15 of Rebecca. Maxim rang up the next morning to say he would be back about 7. Frith took the message. Maxim did not ask to speak to me himself. I heard the telephone ring while I was at breakfast, and I thought perhaps Frith would come into the dining room and say, Mr. De Winter on the telephone, madam. I had put down my napkin and had risen to my feet, and then Frith came back into the dining room and gave me the message. He saw me push back my chair and go to the door. Mr. De Winter has rung off, madam, he said. There was no message, just that he would be back about 7. I sat down in my chair again and picked up my napkin. Frith must have thought me eager and stupid, rushing across the dining room. All right, Frith, thank you, I said. I went on eating my eggs and bacon, Jasper at my feet, the old dog in her basket in the corner. I wondered what I should do with my day. I had slept badly, perhaps because I was alone in the room. I had been restless, waking up often, and when I glanced at my clock, I saw the hands had scarcely moved. When I did fall asleep, I had varied, wandering dreams. We were walking through woods, Maxim and I, and he was always just a little ahead of me. I could not keep up with him, nor could I see his face. Just his figure, striding away in front of me all the time. I must have cried while I slept, for when I woke in the morning, the pillow was damp. My eyes were heavy, too, when I looked in the glass. I looked plain, unattractive. I rubbed a little rouge on my cheeks in a wretched attempt to give myself color, but it made me worse. It gave me a false clown look. Perhaps I did not know the best way to put it on. I noticed Robert staring at me as I crossed the hall and went into breakfast. About 10 o'clock, as I was crumbling some pieces for the birds on the terrace, the telephone rang again. This time it was for me. Frith came and said, Mrs. Lacey wanted to speak to me. Good morning, Beatrice, I said. Well, my dear, how are you? She said, her telephone voice typical of herself, brisk, rather masculine, standing no nonsense, and then not waiting for my answer. I thought of motoring over this afternoon and looking up Gran. I'm lunching with people about 20 miles from you. Shall I come and pick you up and we'll go together? It's time for you to meet the old lady, you know. I'd like it very much, Beatrice, I said. Splendid. Very well, then. I'll come along for you about 3:30. Giles saw Maxim at dinner. Poor food, he said, but excellent wine. All right, dear. See you later. The click of the receiver, and she was gone. I wandered back into the garden. I was glad she had rung up and suggested the plan of going over to see the grandmother. It made something to look forward to, and broke the monotony of the day. The hours had seemed so long until 7 o'clock. I did not feel in my holiday mood today, and I had no wish to go off with Jasper to Happy Valley and come to the cove and throw stones in the water. The sense of freedom had departed, and the childish desire to run across the lawns in sand shoes. I went and sat down with a book and the Times and my knitting in the rose garden, domestic as a matron, yawning in the warm sun while the bees hummed amongst the flowers. I tried to concentrate on the bald newspaper columns, and later to lose myself in the racy plot of the novel in my hands. I did not want to think of yesterday afternoon and Mrs. Danvers. I tried to forget that she was in the house at this moment, perhaps looking down on me from one of the windows. And now and again, when I looked up from my book or glanced across the garden, I had the feeling I was not alone. There were so many windows in Manderley, so many rooms that were never used by Maxim and myself that were empty now. Dust-sheeted, silent rooms that had been occupied in the old days when his father and his grandfather had been alive. When there had been much entertaining, many servants. It would be easy for Mrs. Danvers to open those doors softly and close them again, and then steal quietly across the shrouded room and look down upon me from behind the drawn curtains. I should not know. Even if I turned in my chair and looked up to the windows, I would not see her. I remembered a game I had played as a child that my friends next door had called Grandmother's Steps, and myself Old Witch. You had to stand at the end of the garden with your back turned to the rest, and one by one they crept nearer to you, advancing in short, furtive fashion. Every few minutes you turned to look at them, and if you saw one of them moving, the offender had to retire to the back line and begin again. But there was always one a little bolder than the rest, who came up very close, whose movement was impossible to detect. And as you waited there, your back turned, counting the regulation 10, you knew with a fatal, terrifying certainty that long before, even before 10 was counted, this bold player would pounce upon you from behind, unheralded, unseen, with a scream of triumph. I felt as tense and expectant as I did then. I was playing Old Witch with Mrs. Danvers. Lunch was a welcome break to the long morning. The calm efficiency of Frith and Robert's rather foolish face helped me more than my book and my newspaper had done. And at 3:30, punctual to the moment, I heard the sound of Beatrice's car round the sweep of the drive and pull up at the steps before the house. I ran out to meet her, ready dressed, my gloves in hand. "Well, my dear, here I am. What a splendid day, isn't it?" She slammed the door of the car and came up the steps to me. She gave me a hard, swift kiss, brushing me somewhere near the ear. "You don't look well," she said immediately, looking me up and down. "Much too thin in the face, and no color. What's wrong with you?" "Nothing," I said humbly, knowing the fault of my face too well. "I'm not a person who ever has much color." "Oh, bosh! You look quite different when I saw you before." "I expect the brown of Italy has worn off," I said, getting into the car. She said shortly. "You're as bad as Maxim. Can't stand any criticism about your health. Slam the door hard or it doesn't shut." We started off down the drive, swerving at the corner, going rather too fast. "You're not by any chance starting an infant, are you?" she said, turning her hawk brown eyes upon me. "No," I said awkwardly. "No, I don't think so." "No morning sickness or anything like that?" "No." "Oh, well, of course it doesn't always follow. I never turned a hair when Roger was born. Felt as fit as a fiddle the whole 9 months. I played golf the day before he arrived. There's nothing to be embarrassed about in the facts of nature, you know. If you have any suspicions, you had better tell me." "No, really, Beatrice, there's nothing to tell." "I must say I do hope you will produce a son and heir before long. It would be so terribly good for Maxim. I hope you are doing nothing to prevent it." "Of course not. What an extraordinary conversation. Oh, don't be shocked. You must never mind what I say. After all, brides of today are up to everything. It's a damn nuisance if you want to hunt and you land yourself with an infant your first season. Quite enough to break up a marriage if you are both keen. Wouldn't matter in your case. Babies needn't interfere with sketching. How was the sketching, by the way? I'm afraid I don't seem to do much, I said. Oh, really? Nice weather, too, for sitting outdoors. You only need a camp stool and a box of pencils, don't you? Tell me, were you interested in the books I sent you? Yes, of course. It was a lovely present, Beatrice. She looked pleased. Glad you liked them, she said. The car sped along. She kept her foot permanently on the accelerator and took every corner at an acute angle. 2 motorists we passed looked out of their windows outraged as she swept by, and one pedestrian in a lane waved his stick at her. I felt rather hot for her. She did not seem to notice, though. I crouched lower in my seat. Roger goes up to Oxford next term. Heaven knows what he'll do with himself. Awful waste of time, I think, and so does Giles, but we couldn't think of what else to do with him. Of course, he's just like Giles and myself, thinks of nothing but horses. What on earth does this car in front of me think it's doing? Why don't you put out your hand, my good man? Really, some of these people on the road today ought to be shot. We swerved into a main road, narrowly avoiding the car ahead of us. Had any people down to stay? She asked. No, we've been very quiet. Much better too, she said. Awful bore, I always think, those big parties. You won't find it alarming if you come to stay with us. Very nice lot of people around us, and we all know one another frightfully well. We dine in one another's houses and have our bridge, and don't bother with outsiders. You do play bridge, don't you? I'm not very good, Beatrice. Oh, we shan't mind that as long as you can play. I have no patience with people who won't learn. What on earth can one do with them between tea and dinner in the winter and after dinner? One just can't sit and talk. I wondered why. However, it was simpler not to say anything. It's quite amusing now Roger is a reasonable age, she went on, because he brings his friends to stay, and we have a really good time. You ought to have been with us last Christmas. We had charades. My dear, it was the greatest fun. Giles was in his element. He adores dressing up, you know, and after a glass or 2 of champagne, he's the funniest thing you've ever seen. We often say he's missed his vocation and ought to have been on stage. I thought of Giles and his large moon face, his horn spectacles. I felt the sight of him being funny after champagne would embarrass me. He and another man, a great friend of ours, Dickie Marsh, dressed up as women and sang a duet. What exactly it had to do with the word in the charade nobody knew, but it did not matter. We all roared. I smiled politely. Fancy, how funny, I said. I saw them all rocking from side to side in Beatrice's drawing room. All these friends who knew one another so well. Roger would look like Giles. Beatrice was laughing again at the memory. Poor Giles, she said. I shall never forget his face when Dick squirted the soda siphon down his back. We were all in fits. I had an uneasy feeling we might be asked to spend the approaching Christmas with Beatrice. Perhaps I could have influenza. Of course, our acting was never very ambitious, she said. It was just a lot of fun amongst ourselves. At Manderley now, there is scope for a really fine show. I remember a pageant they had there some many years ago. People from London came down to it. Of course, that type of thing needs terrific organization. Yes, I said. She was silent for a while and drove without speaking. How is Maxim? She said after a moment. Very well, thanks. Quite cheerful and happy? Oh, yes, rather. A narrow village street engaged her attention. I wondered whether I should tell her about Mrs. Danvers, about the man Favell. I did not want her to make a blunder, though, and perhaps tell Maxim. Beatrice, I said, deciding upon it, have you ever heard of someone called Favell? Jack Favell? Jack Favell. Yes, I do know the name. Wait a minute. Jack Favell. Of course. An awful bounder. I met him once, ages ago. He came to Manderley yesterday to see Mrs. Danvers, I said. Really? Oh, well, perhaps he would. Why? I rather think he was Rebecca's cousin. I was very surprised. That man, her relation? It was not my idea of the sort of cousin Rebecca would have. Jack Favell, her cousin. Oh, I said. Oh, I hadn't realized that. He probably used to go to Manderley a lot, said Beatrice. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I was very seldom there. Her manner was abrupt. It gave me the impression she did not want to pursue the subject. I did not take to him much, I said. No, said Beatrice. I don't blame you. I waited, but she did not say any more. I thought it wiser not to tell her how Favell had asked me to keep the visit a secret. It might lead to some complication. Besides, we were just coming to our destination, a pair of white gates and a smooth gravel drive. Don't forget the old lady is nearly blind, said Beatrice, and she's not very bright these days. I telephoned to the nurse that we were coming, so everything will be all right. The house was large, red-bricked and gabled. Late Victorian, I supposed. Not an attractive house. I could tell in a glance it was the sort of house that was aggressively well kept by a big staff, and all for one old lady who was nearly blind. A trim parlor maid opened the door. Good afternoon, Nora. How are you? Said Beatrice. Very well, thank you, madam. I hope you are keeping well. Oh, yes, we are all flourishing. How has the old lady been? Rather mixed, madam. She has one good day, and then a bad. She's not too bad in herself, you know. She will be pleased to see you, I'm sure. She glanced curiously at me. This is Mrs. Maxim, said Beatrice. Yes, madam. How do you do? Said Nora. We went through a narrow hall and a drawing-room crowded with furniture to a veranda facing a square clipped lawn. There were many bright geraniums in stone vases on the steps of the veranda. In the corner was a bath chair. Beatrice's grandmother was sitting there, propped up with pillows and surrounded by shawls. When we came close to her, I saw that she had a strong, rather uncanny resemblance to Maxim. That was what Maxim would look like if he were very old, if he was blind. The nurse by her side got up from the chair and put a mark in the book she was reading aloud. She smiled at Beatrice. How are you, Mrs. Lacey? She said. Beatrice shook hands with her and introduced me. The old lady looks all right, she said. I don't know how she does it at 86. Here we are, Gran, she said, raising her voice. Arrived safe and sound. The grandmother looked in our direction. Dear Bee, she said, how sweet of you to come and visit me. We're so dull here. Nothing for you to do. Beatrice leant over and kissed her. I brought Maxim's wife over to see you, she said. She wanted to come and see you before, but she and Maxim have been so busy. Beatrice prodded me in the back. Kiss her, she murmured. I, too, bent down and kissed her on the cheek. The grandmother touched my face with her fingers. You nice thing, she said. So good of you to come. I'm very pleased to see you, dear. You ought to have brought Maxim with you. Maxim is in London, I said. He's coming back tonight. You must bring him next time, she said. Sit down, dear, in this chair where I can see you. And Bee, come on the other side. How is dear Roger? He's a naughty boy. He doesn't come and see me. He shall come during August, shouted Beatrice. He's leaving Eton, you know. He's going up to Oxford. Oh, dear, he'll be quite a young man. I shan't know him. He's taller than Giles now, said Beatrice. She went on, telling her about Giles and Roger and the horses and the dogs. The nurse brought out some knitting and clicked her needles sharply. She turned to me, very bright, very cheerful. How are you liking Manderley, Mrs. De Winter? Very much, thank you, I said. It's a beautiful spot, isn't it? She said, the needles jabbing one another. Of course, we don't get over there now. She's not up to it. I am so sorry. I used to love our days at Manderley. You must come over yourself sometime, I said. Thank you. I should love to. Mr. De Winter is well, I suppose. Yes, very well. You spent your honeymoon in Italy, didn't you? We were so pleased with the picture postcard Mr. De Winter sent. I wonder whether she used we in the royal sense, or if she meant that Maxim's grandmother and herself were one. Did he send one? I don't remember. Oh, yes, it was quite an excitement. We love anything like that. We keep a scrapbook, and paste anything to do with the family inside of it. Anything pleasant, that is. How nice. I caught snatches of Beatrice's conversation on the other side. We had to put old Marksman down, she was saying. You remember old Marksman, the best hunter I ever had? Oh dear, not old Marksman, said her grandmother. Yes, poor old man, got blind in both eyes, Poor Marksman, echoed the old lady. I thought perhaps it was not very tactful to talk about blindness, and I glanced at the nurse. She was still busy clicking her needles. Do you hunt, Mrs. De Winter? She said. No, I'm afraid I don't, I said. Perhaps you will come to it. We are all very fond of hunting in this part of the world. Yes. Mrs. De Winter is very keen on art, said Beatrice to the nurse. I tell her there are heaps of spots in Manderley that would make very jolly pictures. Oh, rather, agreed the nurse, pausing a moment from the fury of the knitting. What a nice hobby. I had a friend who was a wonder with her pencil. We went to Provence together one Easter, and she did such pretty sketches. How nice, I said. We were talking about sketching, shouted Beatrice to her grandmother. You did not know we had an artist in the family, did you? Who's the artist? I don't know any. Your new granddaughter, said Beatrice. You ask her what I gave her for a wedding present. I smiled, waiting to be asked. The old lady turned her head in my direction. What's Bea talking about? I did not know you were an artist. We never had any artists in the family. Beatrice was joking, I said. Of course, I'm not an artist, really. I like drawing as a hobby. I've never had any lessons. Beatrice gave me some lovely books as a present. Oh, she said, rather bewildered. Beatrice gave you some books, did she? Rather like taking coals to Newcastle, wasn't it? There are so many books in the library at Manderley. She laughed heartily. We all joined in her joke. I hoped the subject would be left at that, but Beatrice had a harp on it. You don't understand, Gran, she said. They weren't ordinary books. They were volumes on art, 6 of them. The nurse leaned forward to add her tribute. Mrs. Lacey is trying to explain that Mrs. De Winter is very fond of sketching as a hobby. So she gave her 6 fine volumes all about painting as a wedding present. What a funny thing to do, said the grandmother. I don't think much of books as a wedding present. Nobody ever gave me any books when I was married. I should never have read them if they had. She laughed again. Beatrice looked rather offended. I smiled at her to show my sympathy. I don't think she saw. The nurse resumed her knitting. I want my tea, said the old lady. Isn't it 4:30 yet? Why doesn't Nora bring the tea? What? Hungry again after our big lunch, said the nurse, rising to her feet and smiling brightly at her charge. I felt rather exhausted and wondered, rather shocked at my callous thought, why old people were sometimes such a strain. Worse than young children or puppies, because one had to be polite. I sat with my hands in my lap, ready to agree with what anybody said. The nurse was thumping the pillows and arranging the shawls. Maxim's grandmother suffered her in patience. She closed her eyes as though she were tired. She looked more like Maxim than ever. I knew how she must have looked when she was young, tall and handsome, going round to the stables at Manderley with sugar in her pockets, holding her trailing skirt out of the mud. I pictured the nipped-in waist, the high collar. I heard her ordering the carriage for 2 o'clock. That was all finished now for her, all gone. Her husband had been dead for 40 years, her son for 15. She had to live here in this bright red gabled house with the nurse until it was time for her to die. I thought how little we knew about the feelings of old people. Children, we understand, their fears and hopes and make-believe. I was a child yesterday. I had not forgotten. But Maxim's grandmother, sitting there in her shawl with her poor blind eyes, what did she feel? What was she thinking? Did she know that Beatrice was yawning and glancing at her watch? Did she guess that we had come to visit her because we felt it was right, it was a duty, so that when she got home afterwards, Beatrice would be able to say, "Well, that clears my conscience for 3 months." Did she ever think about Manderley? Did she remember sitting at the dining room table where I sat? Did she too have tea under the chestnut tree? Or was it all forgotten and laid aside? And was there nothing left behind the calm, pale face of hers but little aches and little strange discomforts, a blurred thankfulness when the sun shone, a tremor when the wind blew cold? I wished that I could lay my hands upon her face and take the years away. I wished I could see her young as she once was, with color in her cheeks and chestnut hair, alert and active as Beatrice by her side, talking as she did about hunting, hounds, and horses, not sitting there with her eyes closed while the nurse thumped the pillows behind her head. "We got a treat today, you know," said the nurse. "Watercress sandwiches for tea. We love watercress, don't we?" "Is it Watercress Day?" said Maxim's grandmother, raising her head from the pillows and looking towards the door. "You did not tell me that. Why does not Nora bring my tea?" "I wouldn't have your job, sister, for 1,000 a day," said Beatrice sotto voce to the nurse. "Oh, I'm used to it, Mrs. Lacey," smiled the nurse. "It's very comfortable here, you know. Of course, we have our bad days, but they might be a great deal worse. She's very easy, not like some patients. The staff are obliging too. That's really the main thing. Here comes Nora." The parlor maid brought out a little gate-legged table and a snowy cloth. "What a time you've been, Nora," grumbled the old lady. "It's only just turned the half hour, madam," said Nora in a special voice, bright and cheerful, like the nurse. I wondered if Maxim's grandmother realized that people spoke to her in this way. I wondered when they had done so for the first time, and if she had noticed then. Perhaps, she said to herself, "They think I'm getting old. How very ridiculous." And then little by little, she had become accustomed to it, and now it was as though they had always done so. It was part of her background. But the young woman with the chestnut hair and the narrow waist who gave sugar to the horses, where was she? We drew our chairs to the gate-legged table and began to eat watercress sandwiches. The nurse prepared special ones for the old lady. "There now, isn't that a treat?" I saw a slow smile pass over the calm, placid face. "I like Watercress Day," she said. The tea was scalding, much too hot to drink. The nurse drank hers in tiny sips. "Boiling water today," she said, nodding at Beatrice. "I have such trouble about it. They will let the tea stew. I've told them time and time again about it. They will not listen." "Oh, they're all the same," said Beatrice. "I've given it up as a bad job." The old lady stirred hers with a spoon, her eyes very far and distant. I wished I knew what she was thinking about. "Did you have fine weather in Italy?" said the nurse. "Yes, it was very warm," I said. Beatrice turned to her grandmother. "They had lovely weather in Italy for their honeymoon. Maxim got quite sunburnt." "Why isn't Maxim here today?" said the old lady. "We told you, darling, Maxim had to go to London," said Beatrice impatiently. "Some dinner, you know. Giles went too." "Oh, I see. Why did you say Maxim was in Italy?" "He was in Italy, Gran, in April. They're back at Manderley now." She glanced at the nurse, shrugging her shoulders. "Mr. and Mrs. De Winter are in Manderley now," repeated the nurse. "It's been lovely there this month," I said, drawing nearer to Maxim's grandmother. "The roses are in bloom now. I wish I had brought you some." "Yes, I like roses," she said vaguely, and then peering closer at me with her dim blue eyes. "Are you staying at Manderley too?" I swallowed. There was a slight pause. Then Beatrice broke in with her loud, impatient voice. "Gran, darling, you know perfectly well she lives there now. She and Maxim are married." I noticed the nurse put down her cup of tea and glanced swiftly at the old lady. She had relaxed against the pillows, plucking at her shawl, and her mouth began to tremble. "You talk too much, all of you. I don't understand." Then she looked across at me, a frown on her face, and began shaking her head. Who are you, my dear? I haven't seen you here before. I don't know your face. I don't remember you at Manderley. P, who is this child? Why did not Maxim bring Rebecca? I'm so fond of Rebecca. Where is dear Rebecca?" There was a long pause, a moment of agony. I felt my cheeks grow scarlet. The nurse got to her feet very quickly and went to the bath chair. "I want Rebecca," repeated the old lady. "What have you done with Rebecca?" Beatrice rose clumsily from the table, shaking the cups and saucers. She too had turned very red and her mouth twitched. "I think you had better go, Mrs. Lacey," said the nurse, rather pink and flustered. "She's looking a little tired, and when she wanders like this, it sometimes lasts a few hours. She does get excited like this from time to time. It's very unfortunate it should happen today. I'm sure you will understand, Mrs. De Winter." She turned apologetically to me. "Of course," I said quickly. "It's much better we should go." Beatrice and I groped for our bags and gloves. The nurse had turned to her patient again. "Now what's this all about? Don't you want your nice watercress sandwich that I've cut for you?" "Where is Rebecca? Why did not Maxim come and bring Rebecca?" replied the thin, tired voice. We went through the drawing room to the hall and let ourselves out of the front door. Beatrice started up the car without a word. We drove down the smooth gravel drive and out of the white gates. I stared straight in front of me down the road. I did not mind for myself. I should not have cared if I had been alone. I minded for Beatrice. The whole thing had been so wretched and awkward for Beatrice. She spoke to me when we turned out of the village. "My dear," she began, "I'm so dreadfully sorry. I don't know what to say." "Don't be absurd, Beatrice," I said hurriedly. "It doesn't matter a bit. It's absolutely all right." "I had no idea she would do that," said Beatrice. "I would never have dreamt of taking you to see her. I'm so frightfully sorry." "There's nothing to be sorry about. Please don't say any more." "I can't make it out. She knew all about you. I wrote and told her, and so did Maxim. She was so interested in the wedding abroad." "You forgot how old she is." "Why should she remember that? She doesn't connect me with Maxim. She only connects him with Rebecca." We went on driving in silence. It was a relief to be in the car again. I did not mind the jerky motion and the swaying corners. "I'd forgotten she was so fond of Rebecca," said Beatrice slowly. "I was a fool not to expect something like this. I don't believe she ever took it in properly about the accident. Oh, Lord, what a ghastly afternoon. What on earth will you think of me?" "Please, Beatrice, don't. I tell you, I don't mind. Rebecca made a great fuss of her always, and she used to have the old lady over to Manderley. Poor darling Graham was much more alert then. She used to rock with laughter at whatever Rebecca said. Of course, she was always very amusing, and the old lady loved that. She had an amazing gift, Rebecca, of being attractive to people, men, women, children, dogs. I suppose the old lady has never forgotten her. My dear, you won't thank me for this afternoon. I don't mind, I said repeatedly, mechanically. If only Beatrice could leave the subject alone. It did not interest me. What did it matter after all? What did anything matter? Giles will be very upset, said Beatrice. He will blame me for taking you over. What an idiotic thing to do, Bee. You can hear him saying it. I shall get into a fine row. Don't say anything about it, I said. I would much rather it was forgotten. The story will only get repeated and exaggerated. Giles will know something is wrong from my face. I never have been able to hide anything from him. I was silent. I knew how the story would be tossed about in their immediate circle of friends. I could imagine the little crowd at Sunday lunch, the round eyes, the eager airs, and the gasps and exclamations. My Lord, how awful! What on earth did you do? And then, how did she take it? How terribly embarrassing for everyone. The only thing that mattered to me was that Maxim should never come to hear of it. One day I might tell Frank Crawley, but not yet, not for quite a while. It was not long before we came to the high road at the top of the hill. In the distance I could see the first gray roofs of Kerrith, while to the right, in a hollow, lay the deep woods of Manderley and the sea beyond. Are you in a frightful hurry to get home? Said Beatrice. No, I said, I don't think so. Why? Would you think me a perfect pig if I dropped you at the lodge gates? If I drive like hell now, I shall just be in time to meet Giles by the London train, and it will save him taking the station taxi. Of course, I said. I can walk down the drive. Thanks awfully, she said gratefully. I felt the afternoon had been too much for her. She wanted to be alone again, did not want to face another belated tea at Manderley. I got out of the car at the lodge gates, and we kissed goodbye. Put on some weight next time I see you, she said. It doesn't suit you to be this thin. Give Maxim my love, and forgive me for today. She vanished in a cloud of dust, and I turned in down the drive. I wonder if it had altered much since Maxim's grandmother had driven down it in her carriage. She had ridden here as a young woman. She had smiled at the woman at the lodge as I do now. And in her day the lodge-keeper's wife had curtsied, sweeping the path with her full wide skirt. This woman nodded to me briefly, and then called to her little boy who was grubbing with some kittens at the back. Maxim's grandmother had bowed her head to avoid the sweeping branches of the trees, and the horse had trotted down the twisting drive where I now walked. The drive had been wider then, and smoother too, better kept. The woods did not encroach upon it. I did not think of her as she was now, lying against those pillows with that shawl around her. I saw her when she was young, and when Manderley was her home. I saw her wandering in the gardens with a small boy, Maxim's father, clattering behind her on his hobby horse. He would wear a stiff Norfolk jacket and a round white collar. Picnics to the cove would be an expedition, a treat that was not indulged very often. There would be a photograph somewhere in an old album, all the family sitting very straight and rigid around a tablecloth set upon the beach, the servants in the background beside a huge lunch basket. And I saw Maxim's grandmother when she was older too, a few years ago, walking on the terrace at Manderley, leaning on a stick, and someone walked beside her, laughing, holding her arm. Someone tall and slim and very beautiful, who had a gift, Beatrice said, of being attractive to people. Easy to like, I suppose. Easy to love. When I came to the end of the long drive at last, I saw Maxim's car was standing in front of the house. My heart lifted. I ran quickly into the hall. His hat and gloves were lying on the table. I went towards the library, and as I came near, I heard the sound of voices, one raised louder than the other. Maxim's voice. The door was shut. I hesitated a moment before going in. You can write and tell him from me to keep away from Manderley in the future. Do you hear? Never mind who told me. That's of no importance. I happen to know his car was seen here yesterday afternoon. If you want to meet him, you can meet him outside of Manderley. I won't have him inside the gates. Do you understand? Remember, I'm warning you for the last time. I slipped away from the door to the stairs. I heard the door of the library open. I ran swiftly up the stairs and hid in the gallery. Mrs. Danvers came out of the library, shutting the door behind her. I crouched against the wall of the gallery so that I should not be seen. I had caught one glimpse of her face. It was gray with anger, distorted, horrible. She passed up the stairs swiftly and silently and disappeared through the door leading to the west wing. I waited a moment. Then I went slowly downstairs to the library. I opened the door and went in. Maxim was standing by the window, some letters in his hand. His back was turned to me. For a moment I thought of creeping out again and going upstairs to my room and sitting there. He must have heard me, though, for he swung round impatiently. "Who is it now?" I smiled, holding out my hands. "Hello," I said. "Oh, it's you." I could tell in a glance that something had made him very angry. His mouth was hard, his nostrils white and pinched. "What have you been doing with yourself?" he said. He kissed the top of my head and put his arms around my shoulder. I felt as if a very long time had passed since he had left me yesterday. "I've been to see your grandmother," I said. "Beatrice drove me over this afternoon." "How was the old lady?" "All right." "What's happened to be?" "She had to get back to meet Giles." We sat down together on the window seat. I took his hand in mine. "I hated you being away. I've missed you terribly," I said. "Have you?" he said. We did not say anything for a bit. I just held his hand. "Was it hot up in London?" I said. "Yes, pretty awful. I always hate the place." I wondered if he would tell me what happened just now in the library with Mrs. Danvers. I wondered who had told him about Favell. "Are you worried about something?" I said. "I've had a long day. The drive twice in 24 hours is too much for anyone." He got up and wandered away, lighting a cigarette. I knew then that he was not going to tell me about Mrs. Danvers. "I'm tired too," I said. "It's been a funny sort of day." Chapter 16. It was one Sunday, I remember, when we had an invasion of visitors during the afternoon, that the subject of the fancy dress ball was first brought up. Frank Crawley had come over to lunch, and we were all three of us looking forward to a peaceful afternoon under the chestnut tree when we heard the fatal sound of a car rounding the sweep in the drive. It was too late to warn Frith. The car itself came upon us, standing on the terrace with cushions and papers under our arms. We had to come forward and welcome the unexpected guest, as it often happens in such cases. These were not to be the only visitors. Another car arrived around half an hour afterwards, followed by 3 local people who had walked from Kerrith, and we found ourselves, with the peace stripped from the day, entertaining group after group of dreary acquaintances, doing the regulation walk in the grounds, the tour of the rose garden, the stroll across the lawns, and the formal inspection of Happy Valley. They stayed for tea, of course, and instead of a lazy nibbling of cucumber sandwiches under the chestnut tree, we had the paraphernalia of a stiff tea in the drawing room, which I always loathe. Frith, in his element, of course, directing Robert with a lift of his eyebrows, and myself rather hot and flustered with a monstrous silver teapot and kettle that I never knew how to manage. I found it very difficult to gauge the exact moment when it became imperative to dilute the tea with the boiling water, and more difficult still to concentrate on the small talk that was going on at my side. Frank Crawley was invaluable at a moment like this. He took the cups from me and handed them to people, and when my answers seemed more than unusually vague, owing to my concentration on the silver teapot, He quietly and unobtrusively put in his small wedge into the conversation, relieving me of responsibility. Maxim was always at the other end of the room, showing a book to a boar or pointing at a picture, playing the perfect host in his own imitable way, and the business of tea was a side issue that did not matter to him. His own cup of tea grew cold, left on a side table behind some flowers, and I, steaming behind my kettle and Frank, gallantly juggling the scones and angel cake, were left to minister to the common wants of the herd. It was Lady Crowan, a tiresome, gushing woman who lived in Kerrith, who introduced the matter. There was one of those pauses in conversations that happen every tea party, and I saw Frank's lips about to form the inevitable and idiotic remark about an angel passing overhead when Lady Crowan, balancing a piece of cake on the edge of her saucer, looked up at Maxim, who happened to be beside her. "Oh, Mr. De Winter," she said, "there is something I've been wanting to ask you for ages. Now tell me, is there any chance of you reviving the Manderley fancy dress ball?" She put her head to one side as she spoke, flashing her two prominent teeth in what she supposed was a smile. I lowered my head instantly and became very busy with the emptying of my own teacup, screening myself behind the cozy. It was a moment or two before Maxim replied, and when he did, his voice was quite calm and matter-of-fact. "I haven't thought about it," he said, "and I don't think anyone else has." "Oh, but I assure you, we have all thought of it so much," continued Lady Crowan. "It used to make the summer for all of us in this part of the world. You have no idea of the pleasure it used to give. Can I persuade you to think about it again?" "Well, I don't know," said Maxim dryly. "It was all rather a business to organize. You had better ask Frank Crawley. He'd have to do it." "Oh, Mr. Crawley, do be on my side," she persisted, and one or two of the others joined in. "It would be a most popular move, you know. We all miss the Manderley gaiety." I heard Frank's quiet voice beside me. "I don't mind organizing the ball if Maxim has no objection to giving it. It's up to him and Mrs. De Winter. It's nothing to do with me." Of course, I was bombarded at once. Lady Crowan moved her chair so that the cozy no longer hid me from view. "Now, Mrs. De Winter, you get round your husband. You are the person he will listen to. He should give the ball in your honor as the bride." "Yes, of course," said somebody else, a man. "We miss the fun of the wedding, you know. It's a shame to deprive us of all excitement. Hands up for the Manderley fancy ball." "There, you see, De Winter. Carried unanimously." There was much laughter and clapping of hands. Maxim lit a cigarette and his eyes met mine over the teapot. "What do you think about it?" he said. "I don't know," I said uncertainly. "I don't mind." "Of course she longs to have a ball in her honor," gushed Lady Crowan. "What girl wouldn't? You'd look sweet, Mrs. De Winter, dressed as a little Dresden shepherdess, your hair tucked under a big three-cornered hat." I thought of my clumsy hands and feet and the slope of my shoulders. A fine Dresden shepherdess I should make. What an idiot the woman was. I was not surprised when nobody agreed with her, and once more I was grateful to Frank for turning the conversation away from me. "As a matter of fact, Maxim, someone was talking about it the other day. I suppose we shall be having some sort of celebration for the bride, shan't we, Mr. Crawley?" he said. "I wish Mr. De Winter would give a ball again. It was rare fun for all of us. It was Tucker at the home farm," he added to Lady Crowan. "Of course, they do adore a show of any kind." "I don't know," I told him. "Mr. De Winter hasn't said anything to me." "There you are," said Lady Crowan triumphantly to the drawing-room in general. "What did I say? Your own people are asking for a ball. If you don't care for us, surely you care about them." Maxim still watched me doubtfully over the teapot. It occurred to me that perhaps he thought I could not face it, that being shy, as he knew only too well, I should find myself unable to cope. I did not want him to think that. I did not want him to feel I should let him down. I think it would be rather fun, I said. Maxim turned away, shrugging his shoulders. That settles it, of course, he said. All right, Frank, you will have to go ahead with the arrangements. Better get Mrs. Danvers to help you. She will remember the form. That amazing Mrs. Danvers is still with you, then? Said Lady Crowan. Yes, Maxim said shortly. Have some more cake, will you? Or have you finished? Then let's all go into the garden. We wandered out onto the terrace, everyone discussing the prospect of the ball and suitable dates, and then, greatly to my relief, the car parties decided it was time to take their departure, and the walkers went too, on being offered a lift. I went back into the drawing room and had another cup of tea, which I thoroughly enjoyed now that the burden of entertaining had been taken from me, and Frank came too, and we crumbled up the remains of the scones and ate them, feeling like conspirators. Maxim was throwing sticks for Jasper on the lawn. I wondered if it was the same in every home, this feeling of exuberance when visitors had gone. We did not say anything about the ball for a little while, and then, when I had finished my cup of tea and wiped my sticky fingers on a handkerchief, I said to Frank, "What do you truthfully think about this fancy dress business?" Frank hesitated, half glancing out of the window at Maxim on the lawn. "I don't know," he said. Maxim did not seem to object, did he? I thought he took the suggestion very well. It was difficult for him to do anything else, I said. What a tiresome person Lady Crowan is. Do you really believe all the people round here are talking and dreaming of nothing but a fancy dress ball at Manderley? I think they would all enjoy a show of some sort, said Frank. We're very conventional down here, you know, about these things. I don't honestly think Lady Crowan was exaggerating when she said something should be done in your honor. After all, Mrs. De Winter, you are a bride. How pompous and stupid it sounded. I wished Frank would not always be so terribly correct. I'm not a bride, I said. I did not even have a proper wedding. No white dress or orange blossom or trailing bridesmaids. I don't want any silly dance given in my honor. It's a very fine sight, Manderley on feet, said Frank. You'll enjoy it, you see. You won't have to do anything alarming. You just receive guests, and there's nothing in that. Perhaps you'll give me a dance? Dear Frank, I loved his solemn air of gallantry. You shall have as many dances as you like, I said. I shan't dance with anyone except you and Maxim. Oh, but that would not look right at all, said Frank seriously. People would be very offended. You must dance with the people who ask you. I turned away to hide my smile. It was a joy to me the way he never knew when his leg had been pulled. Do you think Lady Crowan's suggestion about the Dresden shepherdess was a good one? I said slyly. He considered me solemnly, without the trace of a smile. Yes, I do, he said. I think you'd look very well indeed. I burst into laughter. Oh, dear Frank, I do love you, I said, and he turned rather pink, a little shocked, I think, at my impulsive words, and a little hurt, too, that I was laughing at him. I don't see that I've said anything funny, he said stiffly. Maxim came in at the window, Jasper dancing at his heels. What's all the excitement about, he said. Frank is being so gallant, I said. He thinks Lady Crowan's idea of my dressing up as a Dresden shepherdess is nothing to laugh at. Lady Crowan is a damned nuisance, said Maxim. If she had to write out all the invitations and organize the affair, she would not be so enthusiastic. It's always been the same, though. The locals look upon Manderley as if it was a pavilion on the end of a pier, and expect us to put up a turn for their benefit. I suppose we shall have to ask the whole county. I've got the records in the office, said Frank. It won't really entail much work. Licking the stamps is the toughest job. We'll give that to you to do, said Maxim, smiling at me. Oh, we'll do that in the office, said Frank. Mrs. De Winter need not bother her head about anything at all. I wondered what they'd say if I suddenly announced my intention of running the whole affair. Laugh, I suppose. and then begin talking of something else. I was glad, of course, to be relieved of the responsibility, but it rather added to my sense of humility to feel that I was not even capable of licking stamps. I thought of the writing desk in the morning room, the docketed pigeonholes all marked in ink by that slanting, pointed hand. "What will you wear?" I said to Maxim. "I never dress up." "It's the one prerequisite allowed to the host, isn't it, Frank?" "I can't really go as a Dresden shepherdess," I said. "What on earth shall I do? I'm not much good at dressing up." "Put a ribbon round your hair and be Alice in Wonderland," he said. "You'd look like it now, with your finger in your mouth." "Don't be so rude," I said. "I know my hair is straight, but it isn't as straight as that. I tell you what, I'll give you and Frank the surprise of your lives, and you won't know me. As long as you don't black your face and pretend to be a monkey, I don't mind what you do," said Maxim. "All right, that's a bargain," I said. "I'll keep my costume a secret to the last minute, and you won't know anything about it. Come on, Jasper. We don't care what they say, do we?" I heard Maxim laughing as I went out into the garden, and he said something to Frank, which I did not catch. I wished he would not always treat me as a child, rather spoiled, rather irresponsible, someone to be petted from time to time when the mood came upon him, but more often forgotten, more often patted on the shoulder and told to run and play. I wished something would happen to make me look wiser, more mature. Was it always going to be like this? He way ahead of me, with his own moods that I did not share, his secret troubles that I did not know? Would we never be together, he a man and I a woman, standing shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, with no gulf between us? I did not want to be a child. I wanted to be his wife, his mother. I wanted to be old. I stood on the terrace, biting my nails, looking down towards the sea, and as I stood there I wondered for the 20th time that day whether it was by Maxim's orders that those rooms in the west wing were kept furnished and untouched. I wondered if he went, as Mrs. Danvers did, and touched the brushes on the dressing table, opened the wardrobe doors, and put his hands amongst the clothes. "Come on, Jasper," I shouted. Run with me. Come on, can't you?" And I tore across the grass, savagely, angrily, the bitter tears behind my eyes, with Jasper leaping at my heels and barking hysterically. The news soon spread about the fancy dress ball. My little maid Clarice, her eyes shining with excitement, talked of nothing else. I gathered from her that the servants in general were all delighted. "Mr. Frith says it will be like old times," said Clarice eagerly. "I heard him saying so to Alice in the passage this morning." "What will you wear, madam?" "I don't know, Clarice. I can't think," I said. "Mother said I was to be sure and tell her," said Clarice. "She remembers the last ball they gave at Manderley, and she has never forgotten it. Will you be hiring a costume from London, do you think?" "I haven't made up my mind, Clarice," I said, "but I tell you what, when I do decide, I shall tell you and nobody else. It will be a dead secret between both of us." "Oh, madam, how exciting," breathed Clarice. "I don't know how I'm going to wait for the day." I was curious to know Mrs. Danvers' reaction to the news. Since that afternoon, I dreaded even the sound of her voice down the house telephone, and by using Robert as mediator between us, I was spared the last ordeal. I could not forget the expression on her face when she left the library after that interview with Maxim. I thanked God she had not seen me crouching in the gallery, and I wondered, too, if she thought that it was I who told Maxim about Favell's visit to the house. If so, she would hate me more than ever. I shuddered now when I remembered the touch of her hand on my arm and that dreadful, soft, intimate pitch of her voice close to my ear. I did not want to remember anything about that afternoon. That was why I did not speak to her, not even on the house telephone. The preparations went on for the ball. Everything seemed to be done down at the estate office. Maxim and Frank were down there every morning. As Frank had said, I did not have to bother my head about anything. I don't think I licked one stamp. I began to get in a panic about my costume. It seemed so feeble not to be able to think of anything, and I kept remembering all the people who would come, from Kerrith and round about, the bishop's wife, who had enjoyed herself so much last time, Beatrice and Giles. That tiresome Lady Crowan, and many more people I did not know and who had never seen me. They would, every one of them, have some criticism to offer, some curiosity to know what sort of effort I should make. At last, in desperation, I remembered the books that Beatrice had given me for a wedding present, and I sat down in the library one morning, turning over the pages as a last hope, passing from illustration to illustration in a sort of frenzy. Nothing seemed suitable. They were all so elaborate and pretentious. Those gorgeous costumes of velvet and silk in the reproductions given of Rubens, Rembrandt, and others. I got hold of a piece of paper and a pencil and copied one or two of them, but they did not please me, and I threw the sketches into the wastepaper basket in disgust, thinking no more about them. In the evening, when I was changing for dinner, there was a knock at the bedroom door. I called, "Come in," thinking it was Clarice. The door opened, and it was not Clarice. It was Mrs. Danvers. She held a piece of paper in her hand. "I hope you will forgive me disturbing you," she said, "but I was not sure whether you meant to throw these drawings away. All the waste paper baskets are always brought to me to check at the end of the day, in case of mislaying anything of value. Robert told me this was thrown into the library basket." Oh, my word. That's from me. I had turned quite cold all over at the sight of her, and at first I could not find my voice. She held out the paper for me to see. It was the rough drawing I had done during the morning. "No, Mrs. Danvers," I said after a moment. "It doesn't matter throwing that away. It was only a rough sketch. I don't want it." "Very good," she said. "I thought it better to inquire from you personally to save any misunderstanding." Yes, of course. I thought she would turn and go, but she went on standing there by the door. "So you have not yet decided what you will wear?" she said. There was a hint of derision in her voice, a trace of odd satisfaction. I suppose she had heard of my efforts through Clarice in some way. No, I haven't decided." She continued watching me, her hand on the handle of the door. "I wonder you don't copy one of the pictures in your gallery," she said. I pretended to file my nails. They were too short and too brittle, but the action gave me something to do, and I did not have to look at her. "Yes, I might think about that," I said. I wondered privately why such an idea had never come to me before. It was an obvious and very good solution to my difficulty. I did not want her to know this, though. I went on filing my nails. "All the pictures in the gallery would make good costumes," said Mrs. Danvers, "especially that one of the young lady in white, with her hat in her hand. I wonder Mr. De Winter does not make it a period ball, everyone dressed more or less the same, to be in keeping. I never think it looks right to see a clown dancing with a lady in powder and patches." "Some people enjoy the variety," I said. "They think it makes it all the more amusing." "I don't like it myself," said Mrs. Danvers. Her voice was surprisingly normal and friendly, and I wonder why it was she had taken the trouble to come up with my discarded sketch herself. Did she want to be friends with me at last? Or did she realize that it had not been me at all who had told Maxim about Favell, and this was her way of thanking me for my silence? "Has not Mr. De Winter suggested a costume for you?" she said. "No," I said after a moment's hesitation. "No, I want to surprise him and Mr. Crawley. I don't want them to know anything about it." "It's not for me to make suggestion, I know," she said, "but when you do decide, I should advise you to have your dress made in London. There is no one down here can do that sort of thing well. Vaci, in Bond Street, is a good place, I know." "I must remember that," I said. "Yes," she said, and then, as she opened the door, "I should study the pictures in the gallery, madam, if I were you, especially the one I mentioned. And you need not think I will give you away. I won't say a word to anyone." "Thank you, Mrs. Danvers," I said. She shut the door very gently behind her. I went on with my dressing, puzzled at her attitude, so different from our last encounter, and wondering whether I had the unpleasant Favell to thank for it. Rebecca's cousin. Why should Maxim dislike Rebecca's cousin? Why had he forbidden him to come to Manderley? Beatrice had called him a bounder. She had not said much about him, and the more I considered him, the more I agreed with her. Those hot blue eyes, that loose mouth, and the careless, familiar laugh. Some people would consider him attractive. Girls in sweet shops giggling behind the counter, and girls who gave one programs in a cinema. I knew how he would look at them, smiling and half whistling a tune under his breath. The sort of look and type of whistle that would make one feel uncomfortable. I wondered how well he knew Manderley. He seemed quite at home, and Jasper certainly recognized him. But these two facts did not fit in with Maxim's words to Mrs. Danvers, and I could not connect him with my idea of Rebecca. Rebecca, with her beauty, her charm, her breeding. Why did she have a cousin like Jack Favell? It was wrong, all out of proportion. I decided he must be the skeleton in the family cupboard, and Rebecca, with her generosity, had taken pity on him from time to time and invited him to Manderley, perhaps when Maxim was far from home, knowing his dislike. There had been some argument about it, probably, Rebecca defending him, and ever after this perhaps a slight awkwardness whenever his name was mentioned. As I sat down to dinner in the dining room, in my accustomed place, with Maxim at the head of the table, I pictured Rebecca sitting where I sat now, picking up her fork for the fish, and then the telephone ringing and Frith coming into the room and saying, "Mr. Favell on the phone, madam, wishing to speak to you." And Rebecca would get up from her chair with a quick glance at Maxim, who would not say anything. He would go on eating his fish, and when she came back, having finished her conversation and sat down in her place again, Rebecca would begin talking about something different, in a gay, careless way, to cover up the little cloud between them. At first Maxim would be glum, answering in monosyllables, but little by little she would win his humor back again, telling him some story of her day, about someone she had seen in Kerrith, and when they had finished the next course he would be laughing again, looking at her and smiling, putting out his hand to her across the table. "What the devil are you thinking about?" said Maxim. I started, the color flooding from my face, for in that brief moment, 60 seconds in time perhaps, I had so identified myself with Rebecca that my own dull self did not exist, had never come to Manderley. I had gone back in thought and in person to the days that were gone. "Do you know you were going through the most extraordinary antics instead of eating your fish?" said Maxim. "First you listened as though you heard the telephone, and then your lips moved, and you threw half a glance at me, and you shook your head and smiled and shrugged your shoulders, all in about a second. Are you practicing your appearance for the fancy dress ball?" He looked across from me laughing, and I wondered what he would say if he really knew my thoughts, my heart, and my mind, and that for 1 second he had been the Maxim of another year, and I had been Rebecca. "You look like a little criminal," he said. "What is it?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "I wasn't doing anything." "Tell me what you were thinking." "Why should I? You never tell me what you're thinking about." "I don't think you ever asked me, have you?" "Yes, I did once. I don't remember. We were in the library?" "Very probably. What did I say?" "You told me you were wondering who had been chosen to play the Surrey against Middlesex." Maxim laughed again. "What a disappointment to you. What did you hope I was thinking?" "Something very different." "What sort of thing?" "Oh, I don't know." "No, I don't suppose you do. If I told you I was thinking about Surrey and Middlesex, I was thinking about Surrey and Middlesex. Men are simpler than you imagine, my sweet child, but what goes on in the twisted, tortuous minds of women would baffle anyone. Do you know, you did not look a bit like yourself just now? You had quite a different expression on your face." "I did? What sort of expression?" "I don't know that I can explain. You looked older suddenly, deceitful, It was rather unpleasant. I did not mean to. No, I don't suppose you did. I drank some water, watching him over the rim of my glass. Don't you want me to look older? I said. No. Why not? Because it would not suit you. One day I shall. It can't be helped. I shall have gray hair and lines and things. I don't mind that. What do you mind then? I don't want you to look like you did just now. You had a twist to your mouth and a flash of knowledge in your eyes. Not the right sort of knowledge. I felt very curious, rather excited. What do you mean, Maxim? What isn't the right sort of knowledge? He did not answer for a moment. Frith had come back into the room and was changing the plates. Maxim waited until Frith had gone behind the screen and through the service door before speaking again. When I met you first, you had a certain expression on your face, he said slowly, and you have it still. I'm not going to define it. I don't know how to. But it was one of the reasons why I married you. A moment ago, when you were going through that curious little performance, the expression had gone. Something else had taken its place. What sort of thing? Explain to me, Maxim, I said eagerly. He considered me a moment, his brows raised, whistling softly. Listen, my sweet. When you were a little girl, were you ever forbidden to read certain books? And did your father put those books under lock and key? Yes, I said. Well then, a husband is not so very different from a father after all. There is a certain type of knowledge I prefer you not to have. It's better kept under lock and key. So that's that. And now eat up your peaches, and don't ask me any more questions, or I shall put you in the corner. I wish you would not treat me as if I were 6, I said. How do you want to be treated? Like other men treat their wives. Knock you about, do you mean? Don't be absurd. Why must you make a joke of everything? I'm not joking. I'm very serious. No, you're not. I can tell by your eyes. You're playing with me all the time, just as if I were a silly little girl. Alice in Wonderland. That was a good idea of mine. Have you bought your sash and your hair ribbon yet? I warn you, you'll get the surprise of your life when you do see me in my fancy dress. I'm sure I shall. Get on with your peach, and don't talk with your mouth full. I've got a lot of letters to write after dinner. He did not wait for me to finish. He got up and strolled about the room and asked Frith to bring the coffee in the library. I sat still, sullenly, being as slow as I could, hoping to keep things back and irritate him. But Frith took no notice of me and my peach. He brought the coffee at once, and Maxim went off to the library by himself. When I had finished, I went upstairs to the minstrel's gallery to have a look at the pictures. I knew them well, of course, by now, but had never studied them with a view to reproducing one of them as a fancy dress. Mrs. Danvers was right, of course. What an idiot I had been not to think of it before. I always loved the girl in white, with the hat in her hand. It was Rayburn, and the portrait was of Caroline de Winter, a sister of Maxim's great-great-grandfather. She married a great Whig politician, and was a famous London beauty for many years, but this portrait was painted before that, when she was still unmarried. The white dress should be easy to copy, those puff sleeves, the flounce, and the little bodice. The hat might be rather difficult, and I should have to wear a wig. My straight hair would never curl in that way. Perhaps the Vachi place in London that Mrs. Danvers had told me about would do the whole thing. I would send them a sketch of the portrait and tell them to copy it faithfully, sending my measurements. What a relief it was to have decided at last. Quite a weight off my mind. I began almost to look forward to the ball. Perhaps I should enjoy it after all, almost as much as little Clarice. I wrote to the shop in the morning enclosing a sketch of the portrait, and I had a very favorable reply, full of honor at my esteemed order, and saying the work would be put in hand right away, and they would manage the wig as well. Clarice could hardly contain herself for excitement, and I, too, began to get party fever as the great day approached. Giles and Beatrice were coming for the night, but nobody else, thank heaven, although a lot of people were expected to dinner first. I had imagined we should have to hold a large house party for the occasion, but Maxim decided against it. Having the dance alone is quite enough effort, he said, and I wondered whether he did it for my sake alone, or whether a large crowd of people really bore him, as he said. I heard so much of the Manderley parties in the old days, with people sleeping in bathrooms and on sofas because of the squash. And here we were alone in the vast house with only Beatrice and Giles to count as guests. The house began to wear a new, expectant air. Men came to lay the floor for dancing in the great hall, and in the drawing room some of the furniture was moved so that the long buffet tables could be placed against the wall. Lights were up on the terrace, and in the rose garden too. Whenever one walked, there would be some sign of preparation for the ball. Workmen from the estate were everywhere, and Frank came to lunch nearly every day. The servants talked of nothing else, and Frith stalked about as though the whole of the evening would depend on him alone. Robert rather lost his head and kept forgetting things, napkins at lunch and handing vegetables. He wore a harassed expression like someone who has got to catch the train. Dogs were miserable. Jasper trailed about the hall with his tail between his legs and nipped every workman in sight. He used to stand on the terrace barking idiotically and then dash madly to one corner of the lawn and eat grass in a sort of frenzy. Mrs. Danvers never obtruded herself, but I was aware of her continually. It was her voice I heard in the drawing room when they came to put the tables. It was she who gave the directions for laying of the floor in the hall. Whenever I came upon the scene, she had always just disappeared. I would catch a glimpse of her skirt brushing the door, or hear the sound of her footsteps on the stairs. I was a lay figure, no use to man or beast. I used to stand about doing nothing except get in the way. "Excuse me, madam," I would hear a man say, just behind me, and he would pass with a smile of apology, carrying 2 chairs on his back, his face dripping with perspiration. "I'm awfully sorry," I would say, getting quickly to one side, and then as a cover to my idleness, "Can I help you? What about putting those chairs in the library?" The man would look bewildered. "Mrs. Danvers' orders, madam, was that we were to take the chairs round the back to be out of the way." "Oh," I said, "yes, of course. How silly of me. Take them round to the back, as she said." And I would walk quickly away, murmuring something about finding a piece of paper and pencil in a vain attempt to delude the man into thinking I was busy, while he went on across the hall, looking rather astonished, and I would feel I had not deceived him for a moment. The great day dawned misty and overcast, but the glass was high and we had no fears. The mist was a good sign. It cleared about 11, as Maxim had foretold, and we had a glorious still summer's day without a cloud in the blue sky. All the morning the gardeners were bringing flowers into the house, the last of the white lilac and the great lupins and delphiniums, 5 foot high, roses in hundreds, and every sort of lily. Mrs. Danvers showed herself at last. Quietly, calmly, she told the gardeners where to put the flowers, and she herself arranged them, stacking the vases with quick, deft fingers. I watched her in fascination, the way she did vase after vase, carrying them herself through the flower room to the drawing room and the various corners of the house, massing them in just the right numbers and profusion, putting color where color was needed, leaving the walls bare where severity paid. Maxim and I had lunch with Frank at his bachelor establishment next door to the office to be out of the way. We were all 3 in the rather hearty, cheerful humor of people before a funeral. We made pointless jokes about nothing at all, our minds eternally on the thought of the next few hours. I felt very much the same as I did the morning I was married, the same stifled feeling that I had gone too far now to turn back. The evening had got to be endured. Thank heaven, Vachi had sent my dress in time. It looked perfect in its folds of tissue paper, and the wig was a triumph. I had tried it on after breakfast and was amazed at the transformation. I looked quite attractive. Quite different altogether. Not me at all. Someone much more interesting, more vivid and alive. Maxim and Frank kept asking me about my costume. You won't know me, I told them. You will both get the shock of your lives. You're not going to dress up as a clown, are you? Said Maxim gloomily. No frightful attempt to be funny? No, nothing like that, I said, full of importance. I wish you had kept to Alice in Wonderland, he said. Or Joan of Arc with your hair, said Frank shyly. I never thought of that, I said blankly, and Frank went rather pink. I'm sure we shall all like whatever you wear, he said in his most pompous, Frankish voice. Don't encourage her, Frank, said Maxim. She's so full of her precious disguise already, there's no holding her. She'll soon tell you if she doesn't like your dress. Dear old Bee always looks just wrong on these occasions, bless her. I remember her once as Madame Pompadour, and she tripped up going into supper, and her wig came adrift. I can't stand this damn thing, she said in that blunt voice of hers, and chucked it on a chair and went through the rest of the evening with her own cropped hair. You can imagine what it looked like against the pale blue satin crinoline, or whatever the dress was. Poor old Giles did not cope that year. He came as a cook, and sat about in the bar all night looking perfectly miserable. I think he felt Bee had let him down. No, it wasn't that, said Frank. He lost his front teeth trying out a new mare, don't you remember? And he was so shy about it he wouldn't open his mouth. Oh, was that it? Poor Giles. He generally enjoys dressing up. Beatrice says he loves playing charades, I said. She told me they always have charades at Christmas. I know, said Maxim. That's why I've never spent Christmas with her. Have some more asparagus, Mrs. De Winter, and another potato? No, really, Frank, I'm not hungry, thank you. Nerves, said Maxim, shaking his head. Never mind, this time tomorrow it will all be over. I sincerely hope so, said Frank seriously. I was going to give orders that all cars should stand by for 5 a.m. I began to laugh weakly, the tears coming into my eyes. Oh dear, I said, let's send wires to everybody not to come. Come on, be brave and face it, said Maxim. We need not give another one for years. Frank, I have an uneasy feeling we ought to be going up to the house. What do you think? Frank agreed, and I followed them unwillingly, reluctant to leave the cramped, rather uncomfortable little dining room that was so typical of Frank's bachelor establishment, and which seemed to me today the embodiment of peace and quietude. When we came to the house, we found that the band had arrived, and we were standing about in the hall rather pink in the face and self-conscious, while Frith, more important than ever, offered refreshments. The band were to be our guests for the night, and after we had welcomed them and exchanged a few slightly obvious jokes proper to the occasion, the band were borne off to their quarters to be followed by a tour of the grounds. The afternoon dragged like the last hour before a journey when one is packed up and keyed to departure, and I wandered from room to room almost as lost as Jasper, who trailed reproachfully at my heels. There was nothing I could do to help, and it would have been wiser on my part to have kept clear of the house altogether and taken the dog and myself for a long walk. By the time I decided upon this, it was too late. Maxim and Frank were demanding tea, and when tea was over, Beatrice and Giles arrived. The evening had come upon us all too soon. This is like old times, said Beatrice, kissing Maxim and looking about her. Congratulations to you for remembering every detail. The flowers are exquisite, she added, turning to me. Did you do them? No, I said, rather ashamed. Mrs. Danvers is responsible for everything. Oh, well, after all. Beatrice did not finish her sentence. She accepted a light for her cigarette from Frank, and once it was lit, she appeared to have forgotten what she was going to say. Have you got Mitchell's to do the catering as usual? Asked Giles. Yes, said Maxim. I don't think anything has been altered, has it, Frank? We had all the records down at the office. Nothing has been forgotten, and I don't think we left anyone out. What a relief to find only ourselves, said Beatrice. I remember once arriving about this time, and there were about 25 people in the place already, all going to stop the night. What's everyone going to wear? I suppose Maxim, as always, refuses to play. As always, said Maxim. Such a mistake, I think. The whole thing would go with much more swing if you did. Have you ever known a ball at Manderley not to go with a swing? No, my dear boy. The organization is too good, but I do think the host ought to give the lead himself. I think it's quite enough if the host makes the effort, said Maxim. Why should I make myself hot and uncomfortable and a damn fool into the bargain? Oh, but that's absurd. There's no need to look a fool. With your appearance, my dear Maxim, you can get away with any costume. You don't have to worry about your figure like poor Giles. What is Giles going to wear tonight? I asked. Or is it a dead secret? No, rather not, beamed Giles. As a matter of fact, it's a pretty good effort. I got our local tailor to rig it up. I'm coming as an Arabian sheik. Good God, said Maxim. It's not at all bad, said Beatrice warmly. He stains his face, of course, and leaves off his glasses. The headdress is authentic. We borrowed it off of a friend who used to live in the East, and the rest of the tailor copied from some paper. Giles looks very well in it. What are you going to be, Mrs. Lacey? Said Frank. Oh, I'm afraid I haven't coped much, said Beatrice. I've got some sort of Eastern get-up to go with Giles, but I don't pretend it's genuine. Strings of beads, and a veil over my face. It sounds very nice, I said politely. Oh, it's not bad. Comfortable to wear, that's the one blessing. I shall take off the veil if I get too hot. What are you wearing? Don't ask her, said Maxim. She won't tell any of us. There has never been such a secret. I believe she even wrote to London for it. My dear, said Beatrice, rather impressed, don't say you have gone a bust and you will put us all to shame. Mine is only homemade, you know. Don't worry, I said, laughing. It's quite simple, really. But Maxim would tease me, and I've promised to give him the surprise of his life. Quite right, too, said Giles. Maxim is too superior altogether. The fact is, he's jealous, wishes he was dressing up like the rest of us, and doesn't like to say so. Heaven forbid, said Maxim. What are you doing, Crawley? Asked Giles. Frank looked rather apologetic. I've been so busy, I'm afraid I've left things to the last moment. I hunted up an old pair of trousers last night and a striped football jersey and thought of putting a patch over one eye and coming as a pirate. Why on earth didn't you write us to borrow a costume? Said Beatrice. There's one of a Dutchman that Roger had last winter in Switzerland. It would have suited you excellently. I refuse to allow my agent to walk around as a Dutchman, said Maxim. He'd never get rents out of anybody again. Let him stick to his pirate. It might frighten some of them. Anything less like a pirate, murmured Beatrice in my ear. I pretended not to hear. Poor Frank. She was always rather down on him. How long will it take me to paint my face? Asked Giles. 2 hours at least, said Beatrice. I should begin thinking about it if I were you. How many shall we be at dinner? 16, said Maxim, counting ourselves. No strangers. You know them all. I'm beginning to get dress fever already, said Beatrice. What fun it all is. I'm so glad you decided to do this again, Maxim. You've got her to thank for it, said Maxim, nodding at me. Oh, it's not true, I said. It was all the fault of Lady Crowan. Nonsense, said Maxim, smiling at me. You know you're as excited as a child at its first party. I'm not. I'm longing to see your dress, said Beatrice. It's nothing out of the way. Really, it's not, I insisted. Mrs. De Winter says we shan't know her, said Frank. Everybody looked at me and smiled. I felt pleased and flushed and rather happy. People were being nice. They were all so friendly. It was suddenly fun, the thought of the dance, and that I was to be the hostess. The dance was being given for me in my honor because I was the bride. I sat on the table in the library, swinging my legs, while the rest of them stood around, and I had a longing to go upstairs and put on my dress, try the wig in front of the looking glass, turn this way and that before the long mirror on the wall. It was new, this sudden, unexpected sensation of being important, of having Giles and Beatrice and Frank and Maxim all looking at me and talking about my dress. All wondering what I was going to wear, I thought of the soft white dress in its folds of tissue paper and how it would hide my flat, dull figure, my rather sloping shoulders. I thought of my own lank hair covered by the sleek and gleaming curls. "What's the time?" I said carelessly, yawning a little, pretending I did not care. "I wonder if we ought to think about going upstairs?" As we crossed the great hall on the way to our rooms, I realized for the first time how the house lent itself to the occasion and how beautiful the rooms were looking. Even the drawing room, formal and cold to my consideration when we were alone, was a blaze of color now. Flowers in every corner, red roses in silver bowls on the white cloth of the supper table. The long windows opened to the terrace where, as soon as it was dusk, the fairy lights would shine. The band had stacked their instruments ready in the minstrel's gallery above the hall, and the hall itself wore a strange, waiting air. There was a warmth about it I had never known before, due to the night itself, so still and clear, to the flowers beneath the pictures, to our own laughter as we hovered on the wide stone stairs. The old austerity had gone. Manderley had come alive in a fashion I would not have believed possible. It was not the still, quiet Manderley I knew. There was a certain significance about it now that had not been before. A reckless air, rather triumphant, rather pleasing. It was as if the house remembered other days, long, long ago, when the hall was banqueted hall indeed, with weapons and tapestry hanging upon the walls, and the men sat at a long, narrow table in the center, laughing louder and louder than we laugh now, calling for wine, for song, throwing great pieces of meat upon the flags to the slumbering dogs. Later, in other years, it would still be gay, but with a certain grace and dignity, and Caroline de Winter, whom I should represent tonight, would walk down the white stone stairs in her white dress to dance the minuet. I wish we could sweep away the years and see her. I wish we did not have to degrade the house with our modern jig tunes, so out of place and unromantic. They would not suit Manderley. I found myself in a sudden agreement with Mrs. Danvers. We should have made it a period ball, not the hop-potch of humanity it was bound to be, with Giles, poor fellow, well-meaning and hearty, in his guise of an Arabian sheik. I found Clarice waiting for me in my bedroom, her round face scarlet with excitement. We giggled at one another like schoolgirls, and I bade her lock my door. There was much sound of tissue paper, rustling, and mysteriousness. We spoke to one another softly like conspirators. We walked on tiptoe. I felt like a child again on the eve of Christmas, this padding to and fro in my room with bare feet, the little furtive bursts of laughter, the stifled exclamations, reminded me of hanging up my stocking long ago. Maxim was safe in his dressing room, and the way through was barred against him. Clarice alone was my ally and favored friend. The dress fitted perfectly. I stood still, hardly able to restrain my impatience while Clarice hooked me up with fumbling fingers. "It's handsome, madam," she kept saying, leaning back on her heels to look at me. "It's a dress fit for the Queen of England." "What about under the left shoulder there?" I said anxiously. "That strap of mine, is it going to show?" "No, madam, nothing shows." "How is it? How do I look?" I did not wait for her answer. I twisted and turned in front of the mirror. I frowned. I smiled. I felt different already, no longer hampered by my appearance. My own dull personality was submerged at last. Give me the wig, I said excitedly. Careful, don't crush it. The curls mustn't be flat. They are supposed to stand out from the face. Clarice stood behind my shoulder. I saw her round face beyond mine in the reflection of the looking-glass, her eyes shining, her mouth a little open. I brushed my own hair sleek behind my ears. I took hold of the soft, gleaming curls with trembling fingers, laughing under my breath, looking up at Clarice. "Oh, Clarice," I said, "what will Mr. De Winter say?" I covered my own mousy hair with the curled wig, trying to hide my triumph, trying to hide my smile. Somebody came and hammered on the door. "Who's there?" I said in a panic. "You can't come in." "It's me, dear. Don't alarm yourself," said Beatrice. "How far have you got? I want to look at you." No, I said. "You can't come in. I'm not ready." The flustered Clarice stood beside me, her hand full of hairpins, while I took them from her one by one, controlling the curls that had become fluffed in the box. "I'll come down when I'm ready," I called. "Go on down, all of you. Don't wait for me. Tell Maxim he can't come in." "Maxim's down," she said. "He came along to us. He said he hammered on your bathroom door and you never answered. Don't be too long, my dear. We are all so intrigued. Are you sure you don't want any help?" "No," I shouted impatiently, losing my head. "Go away. Go on down." Why did she have to come and bother just at this moment? It fussed me. I did not know what I was doing. I jabbed with a hairpin, flattening it against a curl. I heard no more from Beatrice. She must have gone along the passage. I wondered if she was happy in her Eastern robes and if Giles had succeeded in painting his face. How absurd it was, the whole thing. Why did we do it, I wondered. Why were we such children? I did not recognize the face that stared at me in the glass. The eyes were larger, surely, the mouth narrower, the skin white and clear. The curls stood away from the head in a little cloud. I watched this self that was not me at all, and then smiled a new, slow smile. "Oh, Clarice," I said. "Oh, Clarice." I took the skirt of my dress in my hands and curtsied to her, the flounces sweeping the ground. She giggled excitedly, rather embarrassed, flushed through, very pleased. I paraded up and down in front of my glass, watching my reflection. "Unlock the door," I said. "I'm going down. Run ahead and see if they are there." She obeyed me, still giggling, and I lifted my skirts off the ground and followed her along the corridor. She looked back at me and beckoned. "They've gone down," she whispered. "Mr. De Winter and Major and Mrs. Lacey. Mr. Crawley has just come. They are all standing in the hall." I peered through the archway at the head of the big staircase and looked down on the hall below. Yes, there they were. Giles in his white Arab dress, laughing loudly, showing the knife at his side. Beatrice swathed in an extraordinary green garment and hung about the neck with trailing beads. Poor Frank, self-conscious and slightly foolish in his striped jersey and sea boots. Maxim, the only normal one of the party, in his evening clothes. "I don't know what she's doing," he said. "She's been up in her bedroom for hours. What's the time, Frank? The dinner crowd will be upon us before we know where we are." The band were changed and in the gallery already. One of the men was tuning his fiddle. He played a scale softly and then plucked at a string. The light shone on the picture of Caroline de Winter. Yes, the dress had been copied exactly from my sketch of the portrait. The puff sleeve, the sash and the ribbon, the wide floppy hat I held in my hand, and the curls were her curls. They stood out from my face as hers did in the picture. I don't think I ever felt so excited before, so happy and so proud. I waved my hand at the man with the fiddle and then put my finger to my lips for silence. He smiled and bowed. He came across the gallery to the archway where I stood. "Make the drummer announce me," I whispered. "Make him beat the drum. You know how they do." And then called out, "Miss Carolyn de Winter. I want to surprise them below." He nodded his head. He understood. My heart fluttered absurdly, and my cheeks were burning. What fun it was! What mad, ridiculous, childish fun! I smiled at Clarice, still crouching in the corridor. I picked up my skirt in my hands. Then the sound of the drum echoed in the great hall, startling me for a moment. I saw them look up, surprised and bewildered, from the hall below. "Miss Carolyn de Winter," shouted the drummer. I came forward to the head of the stairs and stood there, smiling, my hat in my hand, like the girl in the picture. I waited for the clapping and the laughter that would follow as I walked slowly down the stairs. Nobody clapped. Nobody moved. They all stared at me like dumb things. Beatrice uttered a little cry and put her hand to her mouth. I went on smiling. I put one hand on the banister. "How do you do, Mr. De Winter?" I said. Maxim had not moved. He stared up at me, his glass in his hand. There was no color in his face. It was ashen white. I saw Frank go to him as though he would speak, but Maxim shook him off. I hesitated, 1 foot already on the stairs. Something was wrong. They had not understood. Why was Maxim looking like that? Why did they all stand like dummies, like people in a trance? Then Maxim moved forward to the stairs, his eyes never leaving my face. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he said. His eyes blazed in anger. His face was still ashen white. I could not move. I went on standing there, my hand on the banister. "It's the picture," I said, terrified at his eyes, at his voice. "It's the picture, the one in the gallery." There was a long silence. We went on staring at each other. Nobody moved in the hall. I swallowed. My hand moved to my throat. "What is it?" I said. "What have I done?" If only they would not stare at me like that with dull, blank faces. If only somebody would say something. When Maxim spoke again, I did not recognize his voice. It was still and quiet, icy cold, not a voice I knew. "Go and change," he said. "It does not matter what you put on. Find an ordinary evening frock. Anything will do. Go now before anybody comes." I could not speak. I went on staring at him. His eyes were the only living things in the white mask of his face. "What are you standing there for?" he said. "Did you not hear what I said?" I turned and ran blindly through the archway to the corridors beyond. I caught a glimpse of the astonished face of the drummer who had announced me. I brushed past him, stumbling, not looking where I went. Tears blinded my eyes. I did not know what was happening. Clarice had gone. The corridor was deserted. I looked about me, stunned and stupid, like a haunted thing. Then I saw that door leading to the west wing was open wide, and that someone was standing there. It was Mrs. Danvers. I shall never forget the expression on her face. Loathsome, triumphant, the face of an exulting devil. She stood there, smiling at me. And then I ran from her, down the long, narrow passage to my own room, tripping, stumbling over the flounces of my dress. Chapter. I was stumbling over my own words here because I think we all had a suspicion that this particular portrait, this particular costume to emulate was going to be just this reaction. Oh my God. I keep reminding myself this is a child that can be easily influenced and didn't have any experience to say, why is she being so nice to me? Is she setting me up for a fall? That comes with experience. And our poor unnamed narrator and Maxim and, just shouting at her, like, "What do you think you are doing?" She couldn't know what this was about, but he's about to find out, I hope. I hope that she's given up that she needs Mrs. Danvers to validate her as if she's going to be some friend to her if she treats her nicely. This never happens, does it? Does it? I am thinking about a conversation that Lizette and I had. If you didn't note, she interviewed me for her stash that we're doing, and we got into a little bit of a discussion about what to do when people aren't nice to you. And I was like, it doesn't matter what they think, because they try to pull you down to their level, and we just rise above, because the nicer you are to them, in a way of being like, I hope you like me, the meaner they are to you. And so I don't go down that road. I don't, but this comes with experience. That's what I'm trying to say before I run out of time. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. How I wish this was a discussion that we can all have. And maybe that's something, once the holidays are, beyond us a little bit, Thanksgiving at least, that we all get together and we all like just pull our hair out collectively and scream. I'm sure you guys are all screaming at whatever it is that you're listening to me on. Don't trust her. She's a devil woman. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and thank you so much for being here. I am so thankful for you.